Hello everyone, welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George. It's Monday again. The wheel of time keeps on turning and we are back with an episode that, thank goodness, contains 100% less slippery gym. While I was off in the lotion void from the last video, I set some traps. Just your standard glyphs and runes and entombing spells. And so as long as the lotion doesn't rub it off the walls, we should be all good for an episode or two. Although now that I think about it, it's definitely getting rubbed off. I do not know what I was thinking. Those spells certainly aren't gonna last. This is also where his two family members, Shady and Wicked, should pop up, but I think they've forgotten their own voices and how they sound, so I think we'll be in the clear on that one for this week. So let's get into the week, but first, let me give a huge shout out to my newest patrons, Heath and Chance. Thank you so much for jumping on board the room crew, the board fam. Team No Money, No Brains. That's the team that I'm on. We'll work on a catchy name, but thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means a heck of a lot, as all of my patrons know, and I appreciated you even more this past April 1st for making sure that that video wasn't too insane to exist on the internet, but in fact, it went out the other side. Anyway, still, thank you so much. It is because of you that this channel still exists and hasn't died a horrible death yet. And so luckily I can afford another month's worth of ramen. So if you are a regular viewer and you think you can afford throwing me 25 cents a video, like the low-rate gumball machine of a person that I am, I would appreciate it a bunch. It definitely helps. Even a little just goes a long way. And if not, that's okay too. Thank you so much for being here. And we've got a fairly nice week this week, or maybe it's just nice for me because I didn't have to parse through many truly horrendous campaigns as I sometimes filter out or bring to light for you all. But first up, we have a game called Micro Dojo, and actually this is just the expansion to the original Micro Dojo. And this expansion just adds some new mechanisms into the original game. The original game is you have this little 3x3 board, and there are 4 meeples on it. You basically move one meeple, and you take the action that they move to, and then you put your little daimyo token on it to indicate that nobody can take that action until you move that token and take a different meeple's action. So you're manipulating these 4 meeples around while also paying attention to what actions you'll leave open to your opponent. And you just play to a certain amount of points. I think it's 7. And that's the base game. Now the expansion adds in a new mechanic, a loyalty mechanic basically, so you can go up this loyalty track and unlock additional buildings as well, because you can build your own little buildings and that's how you get points. But it also brings in a modular board, so you can now rearrange this 3x3 grid, which feels like it would be 100% necessary to make sure that base game didn't get stale. And hey, they showcase on the campaign page that it gives you over 40 billion possibilities. So if you were on the fence and you were thinking, I'm not sure how replayable this will be, well, you can play it 40 billion times. 40 billion! And it will be completely different, because it is completely different if you swap those two starting out. Well, it wouldn't be because it's a 3x3 grid, but no, it's completely different. 40 billion possibilities! And then also with this new expansion, you get unique buildings for each side, so it gives a little bit of asymmetry there, which is nice. I always like asymmetry in my games. And the price for just the expansion is great. I love this. It's $9 plus like £1 shipping to ship it out from the UK. Because basically you don't get a box, you just get a punch board with the components on it. It's just one thing, a punch board. And I wish this would be an option for more expansions that just have the components, because you don't need boxes for expansions if you're getting them via Kickstarter. I don't think so, if they can fit in with that original box. Now, I don't think Micro Dojo even had an original box, because they're also offering a deluxe package where you can get both a box for the base game and a box for the expansion. And that would be £20 or $33 Canadian, plus like £6 or $10 shipping. And that feels like that's a bit much for what the game offers when you're gonna pull it out just as a filler in between something. But I think the idea that all expansions should have an envelope shipping ability, unless they're heavy with minis or whatever. I just think that is a smart concept and something that I think we should see moving forward if there is the ability and there's room in the base box, because realistically, there's gonna be. So if they had the punch board option for both still available on this campaign, I would consider it. I think that puzzle looks, the head-to-head seems like it could be fun. but I also think this is the sort of game that falls into the camp of, oh yeah, I just own it because it's small, and not because I'm going to be itching to pull it out every single day. But I do like the ideas that it brings to the table here. And if you are interested, that finishes up Wednesday, April 6th at 4 a.m. Now, next up, just a quick note here. We have Ultima Hero, the card game. And I regaled it once upon a time, a couple months back or a month ago, when it was on Kickstarter, and it branded itself as Ultima Hero, a funny card game. And it was funded. I was surprised to see it pop up again. I thought, Ultima Hero, I know this name, because it was funded. They canceled the funding for some reason. And now it is rebranding itself as Ultima Hero, a strategic card game, and it has made 50% less funding. And this is proof that the funny card games are here to stay. I told them they should put funny card game on the box. I was so upset when they didn't. And now I'm even more upset that they're attempting to call it a strategic card game when it is, in fact, a funny card game. Room and Board TM. Maybe that's why they were worried I would sue. I mean, I think they also took out some content, which accounts for people not jumping back on board. But anyway, I just thought that was very funny, and so obviously wanted to talk about it. Moving on, that's our only weird tangent of the week. Now we're moving on to a game called Fatty Tuna. And this is the sushi version of Catan. But in this one, everyone has to build the exact same 10 things rather than a variety of things, basically. Because you have this menu that you're attempting to complete, and you're going to put your little houses on a Catan-like board and roll dice, and anytime that number that you're on is rolled, you'll get to draw a card from an ingredient deck. And now the ingredient decks have different cards in them, so you're not guaranteed to get the resources you actually need to complete your 10 sushi items. And the first person to complete their 10 sushi items wins. And so that will inevitably mean you have to trade things, or you go to the market and you buy roads and expand. It's Catan with a sushi theme. But the interesting part about this one is that they're really emphasizing that the board can be whatever you want. It's not relegated to the hexagon Catan board. You can put all the water in the middle to have like a river setting, and you can kind of set it up and be creative in that modular way, which I think is interesting. So that's basically Fatty Tuna in a nutshell. They should really call this game Gyoko's Spicy Salmon Roll, because then it would sell like nobody's business. If you are in Toronto ever, go to Gyoko Sushi. It's right by my house, so you can even stalk me in the process. Just talking about sushi makes me think of Gyoko Sushi and their delicious spicy salmon roll. Oh, fantastic. Anyway, this one is $49 US or $62 Canadian. And for that price, well, you could just get Catan if you don't have it. But I think it's a fun project. It was originally made for his mom, the designer's mom, and then he thought, okay, I'll put it on Kickstarter, and they're just breaking even, basically. So I like that aspect of it. I don't like that there is no shipping section. There might have been a shipping section because I looked in the comments and someone said 50 euro shipping to Europe seems like quite a lot. And then now there's no reference of any shipping anywhere on the campaign. So I probably wouldn't get it because of that. But I like the concept, and I think it's a neat twist on a fun format. So if you're interested in that one, that's April 7th at 10:45 a.m. Now, next up, we have a game called Route East, whose tagline is "Race from Istanbul to Shanghai," in this action-packed board game filled with tense gaming frustration, strategy, and co-player vendettas. But also, before we get into the game, I wanted to make sure that you knew that there were over 700,000 different route possibilities to get to the end. They did the math. I mean, it's not 40 billion combinations now, is it, Route East? Maybe you could learn a thing or two from Micro Dojo. I mean, it's not even getting into the 1 million level of variability. And if you don't have 1 million possible routes to get to the end, should we even bother playing it? Just throw it in the trash at that point. I need 40 billion. No less. I'll take 39 billion if the theme is very interesting, but anything under that is just useless. Anyway, it's this little map that you got to go from one point to the other point, but everyone has these specific destinations that they have to visit on the way. And you'll also be constantly stealing each other's supplies along the way, so it makes it more frustrating, plenty of vendettas, and longer. Basically, you have 3 actions on your turn, and those actions are either move 1 space or pick up an action card, which you can only do once per turn. And the action cards, they do different effects like, hey, I'm taking that thing, or hey, I'm getting this thing. Fairly random, it seems, but you also have to time out your routes to stop at hotels or hostels or cross the border and make sure that you have gotten enough money to pay for all the things as you travel across the countries. And this says it was inspired by a true story. And that story is that they once took a trip. That's it. No, they did do a road trip, to be fair, from approximately those destinations. But it reminds me a little of the movie Backcountry, if you've ever heard of it. It's this little indie film about this couple who go for a hike in a provincial park. So they're way out in nature, which is very foreign to me. So you know that they can get lost. And he's doing this trip so that they can propose. And right before he proposes, or right after he proposes, he gets eaten by a bear right in front of his fiancée. And she gets attacked and she has to get back to safety. That's the movie. And they say right at the beginning of this movie, it's inspired by a true story. And there's also this weird tangent of them spending their first overnight night with this weird creepy guy, this weird creepy hiker who's constantly hitting on the woman, and there's eerie music underneath, and then they wake up the next morning and he's just gone, and they're like, okay. So nothing happened there. And you never see this person again for the rest of the movie. So he leaves, you never see him again. I was like, wow, that is some serious trauma that this woman went through. And when I looked it up, what the actual story was, they just said it was inspired by this couple who was once attacked by a bear. Everything else was different, but they said it's inspired by a true story because bear attacks exist. Anyway, that's what this inspired by a true story reminded me of. This is much closer to that, but it makes me so mad, that movie, and I wanted to share it with you all. Anyway, the art is really gorgeous, but the gameplay seems very basic, too basic for me. To give you an example, it has that dreaded roll a 6 to get out of jail mechanism. If you don't have enough money, you go to an embassy and you got to roll a 6 to get out, and that's something that turns me off. However, my favorite mechanic that I do like to think about thematically is that if you need more money, you can go visit an ATM somewhere along the way. And if you actually had that money at the ATM, knowing you're going across this journey, you would just take out all of your money at the same time, right? But I don't think you can do that. So I think, thematically, anytime you stop at these ATMs, you're actually pulling mini bank heists or robbing an ATM and then moving on with your cross-country crime spree. You know, makes me laugh, but also it's not a reason why I would get the game. But if you live in London or Brighton, hey, the shipping's free. And if you are interested in that one, that finishes Thursday at 12:48 p.m. Now, moving along, we have 3 games from BoardGameTables.com. And you may remember BoardGameTables.com bringing you such incredible gems, such as Psychic Pizza Deliverers Visit a Ghost Town and Psychic Pizza Deliverers Visit a Ghost Town. I doubt these will live up to that, but honestly, you'd have to be something absolutely incredible to live up to Psychic Pizza Deliverers Go Visit a Ghost Town. But first off, we have a game called Habitats, and Habitats is a simple tile tableau builder where you are building the best wildlife reserve. So you're driving around in your Jeep, and your Jeep's going to be on the map and it'll be surrounded by tiles. And you move your Jeep to one tile and you take that tile, and then a new tile will appear where your Jeep just left. And you put them into your own wildlife tableau, and you're going to try to link it up so it's next to both tiles of the same habitat and tiles of different habitats. And each specific animal will have a requirement on their tile. So you're mapping out this little puzzle as you expand your reach. Thematically, you are ripping these animals out of the savannah and throwing them into your wildlife preserve. So, you gotta at least make sure they're beside some animals that they might gel with. And that's how you'll score the majority of your points. You also have some goals over the course of the 3 rounds, kind of like Wingspan, that you'll want to be better than everyone else in. So that one is $39 US. And their second one is called Basket Boss. And this is nice because it's a game that reminds you that no matter what, time keeps ticking on and on and on, and the best years of your life are slowly dwindling away and will soon be behind you. What a lovely game. And it does this because you're going to be drafting, and it does this because you are going to be purchasing players and adding them to your team, and the team who has the most star players will win a trophy, and then every round they age. So they can potentially get worse and worse as their bodies deteriorate, like mine is always always doing. Or they can get better. They could get better with age because they're a rookie and they've now, learned how to play the game. And that's what it is. Basically, the game will be you're going to be bidding on these players. It's an auction game, and you are auctioning them off onto your team so that you can earn yourself some pretty little trophies. It looks fun, and it's also $39 US. And then finally, they're offering a game called 9 Lives, which is a trick-taking game. But the difference in this trick-taking game is whenever you win a trick, you also have to take a card from that trick that wasn't the winner and put it back into your hand. So you're going to have to win with these cards again and win with someone's losers as well. But you're also bidding as to how many tricks you are going to make at the start of the round, which I always love. I love that in any trick-taking game. I like seeing the future and then being completely wrong. And how you bid is there's this little mat where you put your little cat meeple, and you can give yourself a range of how you think you're going to bid, but you'll earn less points. And if you get your bid exactly, you'll earn more points. But if you give yourself a range, you're also blocking off places where another player might bid as well. So that feels also like an interesting juggle of how you bid and how you block people off and how many points you get. And it's the first player to 9 points wins. Or it's only 4 rounds. So it's a really quick game, plays in about 15 to 20 minutes, it says, and that one's going for $19 US. Now, Board Game Tables, they're a premium company, and I'm sure their games are good. They just feel like a little bit too high of a price point, especially the first two. For me, I'd like to see them in that 25 to 30 range, because then that works out to like $40 Canadian, especially when I can get something like Cascadia for $34 Canadian. So I'd like it in that same range, because I think if it's not, it's pretty expensive for the alternatives that you can get out there. That being said, I think they all do look like pretty fun games. I really thought going into it that 9 Lives would be my #1 because I really like trick-taking, but after reading it, it doesn't gel with me completely as much as I expected it to. And I think Habitats actually looks really neat out of the two. So I would rank them probably Habitats, Basket Boss, and then 9 Lives in terms of my personal interest. And the shipping is good, to be fair. This is one of the better shipping examples, $4 to the US or $9 to the EU or Canada. So you kind of have to weigh that. And then also, being a premium company, they also give you the opportunity to purchase these upgraded components, of course, for the games. And so in Habitats, you're purchasing these 90 upgraded little meeples, one for each individual animal, basically. And you can put that on your animal when you've completed it for its points. So completely useless. For Basket Boss, you also get these metal trophies, which are also pretty pointless because they just indicate who's won. And yet, we're gonna buy them because they obviously look great because they're produced by a great premium company. Look how shiny those basketball trophies really are. And I think it is very funny and very rude and also funny that they say, right on the campaign page, they say, listen, these are completely unnecessary, and yet we know that you're gonna buy them like the schemy little magpies that you are. Okay, I may have added that last bit. Anyway, if you are interested in those, that finishes Thursday at 11 p.m. Now, next up we have Ares Expedition. The Terraforming Mars card game Ares Expedition has a bundle of 3 expansions, and hey, if you missed getting the Ares Expedition last time for an overpriced markup and paying the shipping for it, well, good news, you've got a chance to do it again. And in true Terraforming Mars fashion, we have some expansions that seem to add not a whole lot of content for a lot more money, even more than you actually paid for the base game. Honestly, compared to what you get in a Terraforming Mars expansion like Prelude or the 2 map one, Venus and Serenus, I don't know. It's not a horrible deal. I'm just always so mad at Terraforming Mars for what they charge you versus the quality of what you get in the box. And it's equally infuriating because it is such a fun game. I just think that they could do so much more. I mean, Ares Expedition is getting double layered board. Why has that not been implemented into future print runs of the original? But then again, why is Ares Expedition, because you can purchase the base game in a bundle with this package, why is it still more expensive than what you can get at stores? It's $40 US. I can still get the collector's edition, which was the previous Kickstarter, in stores at $43 Canadian. I don't know. I don't think, on a purely value standpoint, this would ever be a good back because it will be coming to retail. I know expansions are a little iffy if they'll make it to sort of mass market, but it feels like something with as large a brand as Terraforming Mars, it probably will. In terms of what you get in the expansions, everybody seems to be the most excited about a new co-op mode. So if you felt like you wanted to have a co-op race for the galaxy, well, this would be a potential thing for you to pick up. It also adds in a 5 to 6 player expansion, so you get the extra components and get more resources and whatever. And then it also adds in the achievement sort of expansion, where you get more achievements and just like a few more cards to flesh it out. But it really does seem like the co-op is the value purchase here, and if you're not interested in co-op, then I wouldn't even worry about it. Anyway, you Ares Expedition fans, sound off in the comments, please, and convince people why they should get it. I personally think everyone should wait till retail for this one, or you can get the base game at retail right now, or you can get Race for the Galaxy, which I think is slightly cheaper, but not significantly so, but it's almost the same game. Anyway, if you are interested in that, that finishes Friday at 9:01 a.m. Now, next up, we have a game called Oak, which is all about finding your next favorite milk replacement. Oat milk be gone. Time for oak milk. It's not even a joke. I mean, it was, but it's not even funny. I just have to share it with you all. This seems to be the week for tangents. I have been trying to find a way to make saying oak milk funny for years, literally years. I try it out all the time. I particularly enjoy malapropisms. Who am I? A character from Richard Brimley's Sheridan's restoration play, The Rivals? Anyway, there is no way to make saying oak milk funny. And it tears me up inside that I know this to be true, and yet I think I'm gonna try. Every time I say oat milk, I try it out and it just never lands. Anyway, enough of that. Oat K, let's talk about the game. Now, this is a worker placement game that takes place over the course of 5 rounds. And you'll have cards that will determine where you can place your worker and what happens when you do. Because there are these sort of 3 main sections with also 3 different sections in them, and you'll play one of your cards, and that will mean you can send one of your druids to that spot and do the thing that's on your card. And it doesn't quite feel like this will be a deck builder, even though you will be able to add some advanced moot cards. That's what they're called. And I know there's a moo oak milk joke in here somewhere, but oh, we're not going to find it. But it does still feel like an action selection worker placement where your workers are restricted in the places where they can go, not just by where everyone else has been, which they also are, but what is on your card, because each card can also send it to a different place in this tree, and you can get different abilities for there. So you're going to have to juggle when you play them and where they go, and you're then sacrificing not being able to go in certain spots. I understand and I enjoy this aspect of it, but it also makes me think that couldn't you just limit the amount of workers that you have? Because that is a limiting factor in terms of how many places you can go. But I guess they wanted it to be more balanced in terms of where you can send workers rather than just going all in on a certain strategy. So that seems interesting to me. And it also makes getting those advanced moot cards down the line a little bit more excited. But one of the best parts about this campaign, if you go look at the main campaign page, it's fantastic because it shows you the deluxe copy, and it shows you that there will be a retail copy, and it shows you all the differences that you will get if you do get the deluxe copy now, and you can decide if those differences are worth the €30 bump, 50 Canadian, plus then having to get it shipped to you versus waiting to just get it at retail. In most cases, I feel like it's always a no. At least for me, cheapy old me. But I do love how well structured I believe this campaign page is. You can then say, oh yeah, I really want all these wood tokens, or I don't actually think I'll need them for this one. And I like that a lot. I also really like that for your druid meeples, and this will be in the base game, you get these little shawls or staffs that you get to clip on them like Legos when they elevate themselves to be elder druids. And when you're an elder druid, you get to go to a special place that only elder druids can go, and also you get like a one-time ability. And you can only have one of each type of elder druid. That's why there's all these different staffs and things that you can add on to them. But I think that's just really fun, even if it also kind of feels unnecessary. So yeah, it's an okay rulebook. Honestly, it's not that clear in certain parts. So if you are one to read the rulebooks beforehand, be warned, this will take you a little bit more to get through. Even just reading through it, I was like, oh, it says play a card, but it never told us how many cards actually start in your hand. And you have to wait until you get to the dusk section for it to even tell you, yeah, now pick up all the cards that you've played. And it's also confusing because there are only really 3 types of moot cards, and yet it says you start with 6 of them. And usually in a lot of these games, you will draw 5 cards, right? There's just a lot of things where I was not sure what the structure of the game, and therefore subsequently I'm less impressed probably than what the game will actually provide. Or it could just be that I've seen a lot of worker placement games and this one feels like one of them. Anyway, if you are in Europe, shipping's okay there. You can pick it up for free at Essen. If you're in Canada and the US, honestly, don't get it. Shipping is horrible. I just think that there are a ton of worker placements out there. And if all of these deluxe components were at the retail price, that might make sense. I want deluxe components at that retail price. I don't want the deluxe components at a deluxe price that I then have to pay shipping on. I want to feel like I'm getting a deal and that the shipping is worth it, not that I'm paying deluxe prices and then deluxe shipping prices on top of that, which is becoming more the norm. Or I guess I should say, be coking moke the noke. Anyway, if you're interested, that's April 8th at 10 a.m. Now, next up we have a game called Ryozen. And right off the bat, this is Chris's tangent week again. I have to ask, does anyone out there like box sleeves on their games? Anyone at all? Because I've been seeing them as bonuses for deluxe editions or incentives to try to get you to buy the game. And I just think they're so pointless because number one, if it was a better art, just put that art on the box. And number two, why would I give myself an extra thing to take off and put on the table somewhere when I'm setting up the game? Logistically, it doesn't make sense. And from an art perspective, just give me the better art. They seem so pointless to me, yet the deluxe version offers it here. And that's a reason why you should just skip this one and wait for retail altogether. Because shipping is also outrageous for this one, 17 euros on the low end. But we'll talk about it because I like worker placement and this one again is that. So in this one, there's 2 sections of the board. There's a Ryozen realm, which is the outer layer, and then there's a palace area, which is the inner layer. And basically the difference between the two is that you can put as many people as you want in the palace layer and you can only put a certain amount of worker spots in the outer layer. And the outer layers are divided by sections, and so the goal is to have the most influence in a section at the end of the round because then you get bonuses. So it's kind of trying to control it while worrying about your worker placement. And the workers are a little bit interesting too because they're 2-sided. One is the unrevealed side, which is worth more influence points, and one is the revealed side, which has a specific character on it, which does something when you play it down, but it'll be worth less influence because, as we all know, people working from the shadows have significantly more influence than those who just outright claim what they stand for. So those are kind of the main highlights that separate it. You're going to be competing for these chunks of the pie with your shady figures or your unshady figures and trying to get the most points. Now this one's 39 euros or $54 Canadian for the base retail version of the game, and that feels okay. Even though the components are pretty bare bones, and it does kind of feel like they are deliberately not adding in a lick of wood just to convince you to pledge at that higher tier. I mean, it's like, hey, it's 4 tokens to track who's in first and who's ahead on the influence. You've raised 125,000 euros. You can't throw in 4 wooden tokens for everybody just to give it that little special feel for specific instances. I'm not saying do a whole resource upheaval. That's fine. I understand that's going to be an extra cost, but it's like, it's 4 tokens. Anyway, this one falls again into what a lot of this week has fallen into, which is I would definitely be interested in trying it. I see not a lot of reason to purchase it. But if you are interested, hey, that's April 8th at 10:45 a.m. Now, next up, we have Tidal Blades 2. And this is a standalone sequel to Tidal Blades, which did very well on Kickstarter the last time it was around here. And according to the campaign page, it is currently in the top 1% on Board Game Geek. What a stat! It's not as nearly an impressive stat to say it's number 970 on Board Game Geek. Just barely made the top 1,000. Top 1% sounds a lot better. And this is another co-op campaign game with a bunch of scenarios. And thank goodness we hit one this week. If we don't hit one large campaign game every week, Kickstarter comes to my house and pushes me in mud. And I have to time it out. I gotta make sure I'm outside, because if I'm inside, Kickstarter will still come into my house and lay the mud out and then push me into it, and so then I've got to clean it all up afterwards. So it's just better for everyone. I know it's going to happen, so I just go to where it's a bit more convenient. Anyway, the structure of this, the turns kind of feel like easier Gloomhaven. You're going to have a bunch of cards, and you're going to pick one card, and that will determine your initiative level. That'll determine when you act in the round, and you're going to take that card and you're going to get to do the actions on that card. But you are going to add that card to your own little 3x3 grid, and wherever you place it, you get to choose either a row or a column, and you get to do all of the abilities in that row. So you're going to be adding more and more cards as you go along and getting stronger and stronger as you progress. But as soon as you hit 3 in a row, or 3 in a column, you'll wipe that column after it's done and then be back down to your sort of basic actions. And that's pretty much it. Otherwise, you're positioning yourself on the board, and your actions basically boil down to, this is however many attack points I have. This is however many move points I have. Which is why I say it's easier Gloomhaven, because in Gloomhaven you kind of have a different ability for each one, and these, it's more just the general stats that you will use to move yourself around the board, which is comprised of 3 books, up to 3 books. And I think this is fantastic. This is absolutely the way that all campaign games should go moving forward. Think about all the tiles you would have to have and sort through, when instead you can just open up your book map and put your characters on there. I'm in huge favor of the book map. Let me hear it in the comments if you're with me, or if you're not. I understand the preference for tiles as well, but having all of my tiles having to be stored in a friggin' folder for Gloomhaven and not even fit in that stupid box, I appreciate the book a lot more. So that's the basic structure of the game. The core game is $89 US, or $112 Canadian. Or it's $109 if you want squishy fruit and just heroes miniatures, because it's all standees. And then it's $159 US, or $200 Canadian if you want the additional 70 standees, the monster standees, being turned into miniatures. So it's expensive. Or you can get their RPG book, which is $59 US for a single book, which seems, I'm not too much into the RPG world, but it just seems very expensive. Although they do have a $25 US print and play if RPGs are more your thing. And on top of that, shipping is horrible, at least to Canada. It's an extra $35 to Canada, $20 to the US, so not as bad there. It's around 20 to 17 for the rest of everyone else. And at that shipping price, it's not bad for a game that will be fairly big even if you don't get the minis. So you'll have to see if that sort of more simplistic campaign style makes it easier to get to the table, or if you might lose interest in it. But I do know it finishes up 9 p.m. on April 8th. That is your deadline to decide. And then you've got, a year of late pledges. Now, next up, we have a game called Fire in the Hole. And I know what a lot of you are thinking. You think I would be raving about this game. The title was my nickname in high school after that unfortunate Hot Wings incident. And more importantly, it's a game about tossing tiny little cannonballs into a ship. But I have to stand up and say that this will not replace Bounce Off for me, Fire in the Hole. I don't know why you were trying to come for Bounce Off's crown as the premier dexterity experience for everyone in the world. I don't know why you're trying to go right off the bat attacking at the pinnacle of board gaming excellence. And I get it. There will always be imitators. Some of them will even have more subscribers than you. But there is no way that you can come for Bounce Off's crown and not expect some pushback from us supreme bounce heads. I don't care that you got the catchiest Kickstarter song of the week. I don't care that the addition of pirate eye patches so that you don't have depth perception when you're throwing is a very funny decision. And I don't care that you even have a really cool pop-up ship. At least I'm trying not to care. I do love in their video, they've got this big pirate song, and then immediately afterwards they drop the pirate voices as if to say, hey, don't worry, I'm not actually a pirate. It's me. Oh, tricked ya. I do like that as a joke. Anyway, this is a game where you throw tiny little felt balls into a pirate ship, desperately trying, as all Season 3 contestants of Too Hot to Handle were initially trying, to get that booty. You're going to play a card and you can either fire on the cannon, you'll roll some dice to see if it's only you who gets to take a shot or if everybody gets to take a shot at the same time, or you'll use that card to do some zany things to your neighbors, like just remove them from the ship or swap yourself in or hit their ball as they're trying to throw, which the last one's pretty funny. But my fear is that the joy of a lot of dexterity games is the feeling of making that perfect shot. And if you have these random events that just let someone negate that without using the same amount of effort that it took you to make that shot, it may feel a little less satisfying. I also think that the felt balls may feel a little less satisfying to throw. I'm just guessing, but it's also the bonus of that having them not bounce off the table everywhere. Now the base game is $28 US or $36 Canadian, and this is, it's a decent price point. With reasonable shipping, $5 to $7. Of course, there's also a Kickstarter version where you get the Kickstarter stretch goals. And I hate when campaigns do this, but I'm glad there is that lower tier because the Kickstarter stretch goals that they are offering, which consist of a bunch of other cards, seem completely useless. I love that this is a campaign that has really not delved deep into the fear of missing out because of how pointless these additions actually seem. They look like they bring almost nothing to the table for that almost 50% price increase. So my recommendation, if you are interested, is just get that base version, which is a very surprising recommendation because usually on Kickstarter, you should get the other thing. I haven't seen anything that would make me personally be interested in it for that extra uptick in price. So if you're interested in that one, that finishes up on Saturday, April 9th at 9 a.m. Now, next up, we have not a board game, but a board game's neighbor, and that is the Archie gaming table. And this is another board game company. It's by Geek & Son. They're selling a new version of a table, and of course the minimum price point is $1,000 Canadian, as these tables tend to be. And that's for a cheap small one. For the one that you're going to probably want, which seats 4 to 6 players, you're looking at around $1,600 Canadian, 999 pounds. Whew, thank goodness it wasn't 1,000. Now I can afford it, easy. Anyway, there are a couple of unique things here that, sure, I'll mention. The main thing that they're pushing is that the outside of the table, there are going to be these little component bins, and so you can use them for component bins, or you can remove them to have a bigger table. And just to have that extra component bins thrown into the price, that may interest some of you. The other thing that I think is really neat, and also I know is pointless, but I still think it's cool, is that the mat, the play mat, is divided into 2 sections, so you can presumably remove half of the mat and elevate it a little bit, so that you have one up high place and one down low playing area, and it doesn't matter. It's not going to make a difference for any game. I can't think of any game that I would want to play that in. Maybe a sort of campaign, but when it's a campaign, realistically, you're going to want to keep it set up underneath the table, and that's why you wouldn't push it up to the top, because then when you try to put the topper over it, you'd smush all of your game pieces. So I don't see how that would be useful, but hey, it looks fun. So if you are interested in getting yourself a board game table, check it out. I think, honestly, boardgametables.com has a cheaper price point. I think there's one that is around $1,000 Canadian, but it would seat 4 to 6 people, so I would look at that one. However, if you are interested in this Archie table, make sure you go over to Board Game Co.'s channel and click on his link, because I'm fairly certain he might get a cut, or they would track it, because they paid for some ad time over on his channel. And hey, if I'm not getting paid for this segment, somebody might as well be, and that person might as well be Alex, because he is a nice, solid person who works very hard. Second hardest worker in the business, next to me. We can't all spend 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, making cold calls to everyone in North America, asking if they've welcomed our Lord and Savior Bounce Off into their hearts. Anyway, if you are interested in that one, that finishes up April 10th at 6 p.m. 2 more! Our penultimate game this week is Jurassic World, The Legacy of Isla Nubar. Isla Nubar? It's one of them. And this is a cooperative legacy game by Prospero Hall, who I don't believe is related to Arsenio Hall, but you never know. It's a team of people. One of them might have a distant cousin. My favorite part about this rule book is one of the first lines in the rule book that says, "You're reading the rule book, which will teach you how to play the game." Oh, thank you for clarifying. I wasn't sure if I was reading a graphic novel. How did I get my hands on this manga? I rented this from the library, and I thought it was going to be a really good read. I'm glad it's clarified that it is the rule book in a board game. Although I guess they're saying that because there's 2 different booklets in it. Okay. There's 2 different booklets because one of them's a legacy one where you set up your scenarios and the other's just the rule book. So, okay, fine. You get a slight pass, but I don't really think you need to. But basically you'll get 12 scenarios. You're gonna have a tutorial scenario first, which you can replay, and then at the end of the game you can replay scenarios. But otherwise you are not allowed to replay any scenario that happens. You must continue along with the progression of the game, even if you lose, because things will change and different things will happen. And before each adventure, you'll open up the new envelope, and that'll give you new things, and you'll act as the board of directors and choose where all these new locations go in the park, presumably. And then, since it is a co-op adventure, you're going to try to make sure that the park doesn't explode and that your angry dinosaurs don't murder all of your friendly dinosaurs. Especially because making dinosaurs is, I've heard, incredibly expensive. Now, what I do like about this game, it's going to have this action point system where everybody has a certain number of action tokens, but you don't have to take these actions in order. So I could take 2 actions, then someone could take 1, 1, 1, I could take 2 more, and then it could be 3, 3, 3, whatever. I don't think that's the actual amount of actions that you're going to get. That doesn't matter. You get the example that I'm making. And I think that's really interesting because a lot of these co-op games provide a framework in which you always have to go clockwise. You choose who starts, and then you go one after another, one at a time. But the freedom that will exist in me being able to just use all of my actions at the beginning of the round and hopefully set everybody else up to complete our common objective, that feels kind of interesting. It also feels like it'll likely be a little bit easier compared to other co-op games that don't have that freedom because part of the challenge is working within a specific framework. But that is what felt unique to this sort of co-op survival experience. Everything else is just kind of, cards will come up, dinosaurs will be attacking, you gotta take people to safety, that sort of thing. That'll be the feeling of the game. And so it does seem okay, but it is very expensive. It's $120 US, which works out to $151 Canadian. Plus it's another $31 to ship it to basically anyone. That puts it around $200 Canadian for me. And to spend $200 on a game that's likely going to have bits of it eaten by dinosaurs, I don't know, it feels very silly. It feels like it's gotta be cheaper later on. And this, just based on the IP, will likely be available. That's at least my thought. If I never got to play it, I wouldn't be sad. And that's too bad because I was really excited about this one. I thought, oh, this could really tempt me. But it just kind of seems a little bit too standard to what I already have. And I am worried about that sort of difficulty side of things. But if you are interested, hey, that finishes next Monday at 8 p.m. And finally, our last game of the week is Casting Shadows. And I put out a video, 5 reasons you shouldn't back Casting Shadows, last week. So feel free to check that one out. I kind of break down the rules, all the rules in point number 5. The basic gist of it is this battle royale where you're going to be collecting spells and then playing the spells or activating them, rolling dice at the beginning of your turn to get resources, using those resources to buy the spells or activate the spells so you can deal damage to your opponents to be the last person standing. That's it. But it's all in this cute little art theme that the Unstable Unicorns team is known so well for. I actually am surprised by this game. It looks a lot more interesting than I expected it to when I was first going in. And so I was pleasantly surprised with the experience. I feel like it will be in that sort of gateway game level of things, and I am happy for the people who are going to get it. It doesn't really interest me. It's $30 for the base game, $39 for the Kickstarter version, and then you also have to pay shipping on that. My recommendation, the other one was that it will be at retail, and I don't see the Kickstarter version amplifying anything all that much. What really would sucker me in is it says it gives you 2 extra player boards. And so you think, oh my God, these extra player boards, they're different characters. There's going to be so much more variability. But all the characters seem to be the same until they get flipped over to their shadow form. And then they get to do a type of attack. And so it's not necessarily the incredible variability that you might be expecting with the addition of 2 new characters. So I think it's more of a retail purchase if you are interested. But maybe those extra characters are something you'd want, or maybe you'd want to play it at 5 to 6 players. you can get that as well over on the campaign page. So if you are interested in that one, that finishes next Tuesday at 1 p.m. That's your deadline. And that's it. That is it for the week. We made it. Now, every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. The pick for me being the game that interests me the most. The pick for you is what I would recommend, what I think is the most wide appeal, and or what I want you to buy so that I can play it and don't have to spend my own money on it. But normally it's a game that I think you will enjoy. And this is a tough week because there are a lot of games that I think will be good, but nothing I would be even close to pulling the trigger on to spend my money on. I think the closest thing that I would and will be the pick for me, so I can have one, is Habitats. I think Habitats looks very simple, but I believe the tableau arrangement of arranging your little animals in their respective habitats, I think that has some solid, decent foundations. So that's my pick for me. I mean, Basket Boss also looks funny, but the thing with board game tables and those games in particular is I don't think they're worth it would be $39, so it'd be $48 US to get it to me, so it'd be $62 Canadian. I just don't think they're worth $62. I would want to spend like $35 Canadian on them. And so at that point, you got to think about the alternatives that do exist, because there are a heck of a lot of alternatives out there. So, but anyway, that's what I am the most interested in. It's a pick for me. And the pick for you, again, for the second week in a row, is going to be nothing. It really is nothing, because for the reasons I've just been talking about, I don't think there's anything here that makes me want to run through the streets ripping my clothes off, you know? That's what I want from a game. I want to finish a game and I want to run outside and completely naked and scream about how great it is. I want it to elicit that much passion in me. And I was really excited to check out a lot of these. I was excited to check out Tidal Blades 2 because I'd heard good things about the main game, and it looks okay, like it looks good, but just not for that price. Just get Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. It's a cheaper version, right? Of a potentially more complicated, in-depth system. And then the Jurassic Park Legacy, I was really excited because that's a cool theme and it looks fun, it looks fine. But I think everything kind of just looks fine this week. There's nothing that makes me that excited, and so I'm not going to recommend you to get anything. I'm consistently aware of my own participation in the buying cycle, and I don't want this channel to be a commercial, you know? I want it to reflect my own opinions and be a vehicle where I get to be excited about the games that I'm excited about. And if nothing gets me that excited, I'm not gonna fake it just to have a pick for you. So with that in mind, the fake pick for you is Basketball. No, I'm just kidding. You know what my pick for you is? My pick for you is Dutch Blitz. I love this game. Over on the Discord, this month's tournament that we're having is Affordable Games, and Dutch Blitz just lost to Point Salad, and it is very upsetting to me because I think that game is so good. If you like speed games, if you ever like games like Spit or whatever, this is basically speed competitive solitaire, and I don't know why I threw it out of the frame. I think I was just so upset. Go get Dutch Blitz. This is the expansion pack, but it doesn't matter. You can get either the blue or the green. Yeah. So that's my pick for you. It's a nice $10 card game called Dutch Blitz. Anyway, that's it for me. Let me know if there is something this week that you are very excited about and that gets you really hyped. I'm very interested because maybe I overlooked it and I could take a second look at it, or maybe I'm just wrong, and then you can tell me why I am wrong as well, or let me know what you are excited about coming up as well. I always love hearing about it, and I think it's great when people express their excitement in the comments because it's helpful to people who are thinking about purchasing these things, and it provides a nice counterbalance to my curmudgeonly, miserly attitude. So that's it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Chris George, and oh shoot. I don't have a catchphrase. But I do know there are over 41 billion combinations of cards you can find in here. When you shuffle them together, imagine the possibilities. Imagine the replay value with 41 billion possibilities. Pretty good. I'll see you in the next one.